Are you a bit scared and overwhelmed of grants? Sure, it's great to get an injection of cash to help with your marketing, but getting it is often confusing and feels way too hard. Today, I talked to Emily, who is going to break it all down and share some simple and practical tips on where to start and what to do for greater success in winning a grant. Welcome to Sales Without Socials. If you too are mentally exhausted from the constantly changing algorithms, you're not getting a return on the blood, sweat, and tears you put into your social media efforts, and know there must be a better way to market your business, then you are in the right place. I'm your host, Tanya Williams. I love pink, wearing 4-inch heels, and being the sparkly chief of everything at Digital Conversation. In the last 6 months, I have transformed my business growth by doubling down on the marketing strategies that actually work, and that doesn't include Facebook ads, reels, or silly TikToks. So, if you're like me and you're sick of being on the social media hamster wheel and want to focus your time on marketing strategies that don't suck your time without a result, then make sure you subscribe and keep listening. Are you with me? Let's dive in. And you know what? Let's have a little bit of fun along the way. Hello, everybody. It's Tanya Williams here, Chief of Everything at Digital Conversations. And we're back with another episode of the Sales Without Socials podcast. Now, I love it when I have guests to interview because I don't have to fill up all the time waffling on about stuff. I can talk to other guests who know all these great things that I don't necessarily have expertise in. And this morning, I am talking to Emily Ridley. Now, Emily is a small business advisor for EFX Accountants and Advisors. Hello, Emily.
Hello, Tanya.
Lovely to have you on the podcast.
Thank you for inviting me.
My absolute pleasure. Now, we are talking about a very interesting topic today, and one that I don't know much about because I've avoided these like the plague because I get overwhelmed and look at everything that they need and just go, oh my God, it's all too hard. And we're talking about grants, right? So, before we get started talking about grants and how to get them and how to use them for your marketing, do you want to tell people a bit about your background and business to give us all a bit of context?
Sure. So I came to Australia in 2009 during the GFC with not really any clue as to what I was going to do. So I planned to just come out here on a working holiday. Found myself in outback Queensland. Fell in love with this tiny little town of 300 people and ended up staying there for more than 7 years.
Wow.
So, in that time, this little area of central Western Queensland went through everything flood, fire, and then a really prolonged drought. And I was living with my ex husband. Um, who was obviously my husband at the time, but I was living on the sheep station out of town. And so I just felt like I needed to be able to help. So I got a job working for an aerial mustering company. So a job that I hadn't even considered in my peripheral before coming to Australia, that someone gets
Yeah,
paid to
that
sit in
stuff
a
happens
helicopter and
sometimes,
chase
doesn't
cows, right? That's the
it?
job. Anyway, so my job was to help out in the office, learning my job, putting the invoices, the income, the expenses together, and basically doing internal bookkeeping. As the drought got worse, and it did get significantly worse for the whole region, the work available to me lessened. And I was talking to my employer's accountant about what I could do to help. So he talked to me about what bookkeeping was, but I wanted more to do, more assistance, more hands on assistance, I think. And I found out that people were looking for help from bookkeepers, which there weren't any other around, to help with the drought relief funding, the grants and subsidies that were available from the QRAA at the time. These application forms were 84 pages long, and they wanted
84.
84 pages long, and
Holy.
they wanted 10-year cash flow forecasts.
Oh, that's
Bearing in mind, we're working in an industry where cash flow is based on cattle prices and weather patterns. So how do you predict that in 10 years? How do you predict it 10 months down the track, let alone 10 years down the track? So I went out and I spent some time with the QRAA, and I got that together, and I went and got myself qualified as a bookkeeper, and got signed off by my employer's accountant, and got my Cert 4, and that's essentially how I started. So I started with grants. I started in this space to be able to support small businesses, farmers, and secondary primary production workers, contractors, fencers, those kinds of things, in helping them get whatever was available just to help life happen. Like at the time, people were having to choose between feeding the sheep or feeding their kids. Like it was really,
Breaking.
really heartbreaking.
Yeah.
And so, like I said, I just wanted to do whatever I could to try and help and assist in any small way possible. So that's my passion. I think that's where I've come from in this agricultural space.
Mhm.
I'm now living in regional New South Wales, in the mountains and loving it. But and so again, just being able to then put this back into motion to see what grants, what subsidies are available across all industries. I now work with a huge range of clients over lots of different industries and not for profits, and just help them put grants and subsidies together.
It's one of those things like, yeah, I mean, obviously people that are applying for grants are often new to business, like they're startups, they're trying to get some traction. There's a huge learning curve, as we know, when you start a business as well,
Yeah,
and they don't have a lot of money either, so that's why they're applying for these grants and so forth. Now, I've
sure.
never applied for one because I've just looked at some of the applications and just went, oh, you know what? It's all too hard. It's going to take me hours and hours and hours to put that together. And the chance of me getting it is so slim because there's probably going to be other people that need it more than me, or whatever it might be. So I've always avoided them. And I see people popping up all over, different groups and stuff online talking about grants and there's this one available. And I think for a lot of people, it's overwhelming because you just go, "Oh my god, like, where do I start?" Because they'll go, "Oh, look, go to the Queensland Government website or this website, and you'll find all these," and you go, "Yeah, great, but how do I know?" I've got to then decipher all that and go, "Well, which ones are relevant for me? What ones can like there because there's obviously ones that are partially funded where you've got to put the same amount in, what ones aren't, how does it work?" Like, there's just so many different criteria for all these different grants that your mind just spins. I know mine mind just spins, and I just go,
Sure.
"Too hard, not gonna do it." So I just don't do it. So the
Yeah,
whole point of having these conversations is to help people that do wanna go through this process because, like, I think there's certainly a lot of benefits around doing that if you can get your head around
absolutely.
how to do it effectively. So let's sort of dive into that a little bit. Like, where's
Sure.
the best place to start? So someone's gone, "Oh, there's this grant available." What is, like, some of the first things that a business owner should
That
do?
probably not the first place to start. Starting with the grant that's available is probably not the place to start. You're kind of starting off there in the middle, and you've got to then backtrack and then work towards the end. But
Mhm.
you really should be looking at, if you've got an idea, a project, a thought in mind of something that you want to do, something that you want to achieve, an outcome you want to have, that's where you would start. So I want to build up my podcast network. I want to be able to market this everywhere. In order to do that, it's going to cost me money in SEO or whatever that is.
Yeah.
And I need the tech behind it. I'm going to need a microphone. I'm going to need the earphones. I'm going to need a decent, well lit room, in order to be able to do that. So that's where you would start. What do you want, first of all? Then, when you put that together, you need to start costing it. What is it actually going to cost me to do this? And then from there, you can go, right, okay, now this is going to cost me $12,000 to do what I want to do with this. I actually don't have that spare $12,000 stuffed down the back of the sofa. So I need to look to see, are there any grants available to help me do that? By doing it that way, you've done 2/3 of the work already.
Mhm.
You've done your research on what the outcomes are going to be, how you're going to this is going to promote the podcast, this is going to generate more revenue for you, this is going to create more leads for you. You've done the research on what the items are going to cost, and now you've got a budget in place. And now then you can go and start to look for grants. And grants, like you say, there's 3 different grants available. There's ones where they say to you, don't spend any money until we give you the green light and we give you the money first. And then when you equip the grant, you need to send us all where you've spent it all. So we give you the money first and you have to spend every penny of it. The second type of grant, which is the most common type, is co-contribution.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that co-contribution, the other half of that doesn't necessarily need to come from your back pocket. It may be that you can apply for 2 different grants, each co-contributing, and one will support the other. So there's the 100% of the funding available to you.
Mm-hmm.
Or it may be that you ask for 25% for each, and you've still got 50% from yourself. And then the third one is the one where they say, you go spend it, and then we'll receipt it afterwards. We will refund you what you have actually spent. So there's the 3 different grants that tend to come around most frequently.
And is one type better than another? Like, obviously, there'd be pros and cons to each type of grant, but
Sure.
should a particular type of business do a particular type of grant?
No, not necessarily. There's no one shoe fits all. The ones where it says don't spend the money and we're going to give you 100% of it and you have to spend it and acquit it, they're the ones that are the most popular grants because it's free money, right? People just
Sure.
see that it's taxpayer money, but it's free
Yeah.
money as far as you and your business at that moment are concerned. So they're the most popular ones. They tend to be the ones that want a really good argument as to why you should get that money over somebody else. They're the ones that probably take the most amount of time to research, complete, and submit. And then they're usually assessed in around a board where somebody goes, well, does this one hold more merit than this one? If we can only give the money to one of these, which one are we going to choose? It has to have the strongest argument. So those ones are the most competitive, like I said. So they're the ones
Yeah.
again that tend to be the most in depth and harder to fill out. Then the ones that are co-contributions tend to be more smaller amounts, I guess, or they can be the other end. They can be much larger. It might be a $250,000 grant available to you, but they'll only give you up to 50% of what you spend as well. So then you're looking, if you want that full 250, you have to have a $500,000 project. Now that's a huge project, and that's not usually available to solopreneurs or available to startups. They want to see that you've got established foundation behind you, that you've got a viable business behind you, and that you're going to use this to pivot and grow in whatever way you can. Anything that promotes the opportunity for you to grow bigger, to offer an employment opportunity, is usually a really popular, a really easy to adopt grant. I think they're the ones, if you've got an argument to say that this grant is going to help me grow big enough to take on additional employees, then that's going to win a much stronger argument as one that doesn't say that. If you're looking to expand into export, if you're looking into manufacturing, is huge at the moment, and female founders, that anything that's classed as a female business owner, 50% owned by a female, there's a huge number of grants available to those, and they're on a continual basis because there's a need for it. There's a need for more women to be on more boards across the whole spectrum of industry.
Okay, so there's lots of different options out there. There's different types of grants that people can access. Where
Yeah.
should they go to find them? Is it like they look up their like it's a Queensland government website? Are there other sort of non-government websites? Where like what are the resources?
There's actually a website called Smarty Grants.
Oh, I've never heard of
Um,
that. Okay, we'll put that in the show notes for everyone as well.
Sure. So Smarty Grants, and there's one called Grants Link. And these two are both search engines. So you can say where you are, you can say what you do, you can say how many employees you have, whether you're a startup,
Yeah.
you've got if there's anything First Nations, there's tourism's huge at the moment, trying to get people coming back to Australia in tourism.
Yeah.
Um, regional Australia, remote Australia, like I said, the female founders, all of these things will, if you support disability workers, if there's all of these things, then it will narrow down and say, if you meet this minimum criteria, these are the grants available to you. And
Wow, that's
tell you
super
what's
handy.
available. Yeah, so state based and then federal based as well.
Okay.
But don't forget, you can also go to your local government at any time. There's always $5,000 available from your local government throughout the year that you can apply for, as
Yeah.
long as you've got a case to substantiate that.
So
So,
let's unpack that.
yeah.
What do you mean that there's always that
So
money
if
there?
you,
So you
yeah, if you go to your
can
local
go to the local
council,
government.
if you go to your local government and you apply for, you can just put a submission in. There's probably a standardised form on your local government website, Moreton Bay or Brisbane City Council, or
Yeah.
down here it's Inverell. Um, and yeah, there are grants available. There are rounds of these grants usually, so there are cut-off times, but there are, and it will tell you when the next grant is available. They will tell you then the criteria that they're specifically looking for to promote industry, tourism, economics in your very local area. So start there, start small, and grow up. And
And I
because it's a really good way of practicing how to write a grant, and they'll give you feedback on why it wasn't successful, because these are people that you're going to bump into in the local supermarket, right? So
yeah.
they'll talk to you.
And look, that I think that's super important as well as when you don't, because often I hear from people, oh yeah, well, all we know, all we got like a form response to say we weren't successful or whatever, but that there's not much more than that. So
Yeah.
I think knowing well where you went wrong on this particular time and how you can increase your chances of getting a grant next time is super beneficial for people because then they can go right now and I've focused on the wrong area. I need to include this or that or
Mhm.
whatever that might be. So I think that's really important. I love the fact that there are these couple of websites that you've mentioned that actually are like a search engine and you can
Yeah.
just put those filters in and get, well, here's the 5 grants that are applicable for you. It's like awesome
Yeah.
because it does so much of the legwork, right?
That is, and you might not be applicable for all of them, because you've only put
Yeah,
in, the three little things that's narrowed it down that suit you, and so then it comes up and says, oh, you must be a PTY Ltd company, you must be GST registered, and you might not be. So there you go. Okay,
yeah,
so I can't apply for that one just
yeah,
yet, or it might be you've got to have 5 years worth of financials. Well, I've only been a startup for the last 2 years, so again,
yeah.
I might not then qualify. But it genuinely narrows the field down, so you can start to look at, well, then what does that look for? If if you start with the local government grants and start there, though, then
Sorry, just excuse me for a minute. My garbage truck has decided that now is the best time to drive past and pick up the garbage. And it always
sure.
happens right when you're on a webinar or doing a podcast or something. So it's like, awesome. Thanks, buddy. Your timing is impeccable. So if you can hear that noise in the background, I
No,
apologize. It's just the garbage guy coming and
I
doing the rounds. So
can't hear
it
anything.
won't last
No,
long. Okay.
there's only you can hear that. Can't hear anything, so
Oh,
you're all
good.
good.
Okay.
But yes, so if you start off with those grants, one, it gives you an idea of, they are really simple forms usually. They're the
Mhm.
most less overwhelming to fill out. But there's two things that you really need to make any grant successful. And
Yes.
that is, you
Please
need a
share
strong
those.
argument of why you need this money for this thing,
Yeah.
and you need strong financials to back it up.
Okay.
Here's the money that I'm going to get from you. This is what I'm going to do with it. And this is the predicted outcome from that. They're the
So let's
three
dive
things.
into both of those then. So the first point was
Oh,
around why you need the grant. Like, so
yeah,
what typically are good reasons? Obviously, I can't go, well, I want the grant because I want to go and buy a pair of Jimmy Choos and because they're going to look good
sure.
when I go to meetings. Like, I know that that's not
Yeah,
going to happen. But
it's really
like,
not.
what are some really strong answers that people can use
So
there?
in most cases, it's project specific. So it's for one specific desired measurable outcome. So
Mhm.
it's not going to. There's very very few grants available, unless we're talking about disaster grants. There's very few grants available that are going to help you just cover your day-to-day expenses,
Of course.
excuse
Yeah.
me, that you incur as part of your business anyway.
Yeah.
So things like software subscriptions, or things like um, internet connection, telephone bills, maybe even wages, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
They're just not going to cover those, because that's the normal course of running a business, and your business should be able to substantiate itself without the need of the grant. So grants shouldn't ever be used as a, I've got cash flow problems now, I'll get a grant and help myself trade out of it. That's not ever what a grant is for.
Mm,
That's what banks are for, right?
yeah.
Um, so it's unrealistic to apply for a grant because you owe money to the ATO. You can't afford your next best. That's it. It's
Yeah.
just not how grants work, because it
Yeah,
is tax-paying money.
so for
And they,
example, if someone wanted to, we'll use an example before of starting a podcast
yeah,
or whatever, or they needed to do maybe some SEO to get more to build their online store, or
sure.
so something that's very specific in terms, I'm going to spend the money on a brand new website, or those types of
That's a
projects.
perfect example, because there was money available. I think maybe 12 months ago, the Brisbane Business Boosters grant,
Yeah.
and that's what it was designed around, to help people get a website out there, to build it, to design it, to make it make more noise, and to be able to use that as a platform to grow economic um, and yeah, branding.
Puts more money in the economy, doesn't it?
Absolutely, it does. If people know, and the more people that know you exist, the more likely people are going to spend money with you, right? So
Yeah,
that's,
of course.
and the bigger that you grow, the more chance of you employing other people.
Yeah.
So it is. It's about the, because that's the other thing. Like I said, it's taxpayer money. So essentially, they're giving this money to you to do something with, as like a stimulus package, really,
Hmm. Yeah.
and therefore they want you to generate more revenue and generate the economy and leverage off that grant. So that's what they're looking for. If you get a $5,000 grant, they want to be able to see that you're making 15, 20, $30,000 revenue off the back of that grant. That's a really strong argument for giving you that money.
So obviously, the first one is your why. So, what's the specific project? And the other one you mentioned was around strong financials. Now,
Yeah, absolutely.
if I when I start talking about money and budgets and cash
Yep,
flow, and I just go whoop straight over my head. Like
absolutely.
I
And
am
most
not good
people
with the
do.
financial
And
stuff.
most people do.
Yeah,
So I'm a complete zero nerd. Make no apologies for that, right? Hang around with my little zero crown on and blue
I know
coat
how to
when
log
no one's
in and
looking.
send an invoice, and that's it. That's all I know how to do on Zero.
It can do so much more than that. It should be doing so much more. For anyone who has access to their own accounting software, they should absolutely be having their fingers on the pulse, logging in and looking what those numbers are telling them at any day. So there's a dashboard available on your Zero.
Yes, I've seen that.
Um, and there's a watch list. So you can put specific accounts in there that you're for things that you put against your account codes, so you can measure exactly where you're up to. This is perfect for grant money. So you can put in the money that you've received from the grant, and then you can put in where you've spent that money. You can track, I'm on track for where I'm going, I've spent it
Oh,
all, I haven't spent it all, I need to spend it
really?
quick before the acquittal comes up. So Zero can help you with that. The
That
second
can
thing
help
is,
keep track of all of the like everything that's but anything grant related. You can literally set it up
absolutely,
to Zero, and
yeah,
it's as you're entering it, it's literally doing the work for you. So when it comes
yeah,
to reporting, you go, "Oh crap, where did I put all that stuff?" It's all
yeah,
there. That's
absolutely. The other thing Zero's got now, this is a chargeable extra, but it's only $10. But if you're talking about a $25,000 grant, $10 a month is nothing.
yeah, yeah.
So you can set up an actual project that will track more than just the income and expenses. It will track hours that you're spending on this project. So you can put a
Mm,
percentage of your time and allocate a cost to that. If you've hired a contractor, if you've done installment billing, if it's a huge project, and some of these grants that are available can be $2.5 million for some of the bigger entities, right? So then they have to do interim acquittals. They have to interim stages. By the 18th of every 6 months, you have to send a report in. How much have you received? How much of that have you spent? Are you on track with your project? What's the next 6 months? What's the next stage? What are you going to do before you get your next installment payment? Because very few grants give you $2.5 million in one go. They spread it over 3 or 4 years.
Why?
So again,
Holiday,
having
bye.
having zero projects to measure one project over more, because your zero dashboard is there, but it's only going to work on this financial year.
Mhm.
So if you receive a grant on the 30th of June, or sorry, on the 1st of June, and it's 6 months before it's going to be acquitted, then all your figures reset on the 1st of July because you're in a new financial year. So not perfect in that respect, but it still gives you a good idea. If you use zero projects, you can manage that right the way through the entire process, whether that's 1 year, 2 years, or 10 years. You can
Yeah.
see exactly where you're up to, and you can allocate you can even allocate things, you can do journals and allocate things to the projects, like back end costs, that a percentage of your administration costs, or a percentage of your overheads, or a percentage of your, like you say, your own. You can allocate an hourly rate to yourself that you
Yeah.
don't normally get paid, but it's a true cost of running that project.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So in terms of financials that they're asking for, so usually when there's a grant involved, they're obviously looking at what's going to cost. So you've got to say, well, I'm going to do this, this, and this. It's going to cost me X amount of money. What sort of financials do they want to know about your business typically? Do they want to know what your total yearly sales were, your costs? Like what's
Yeah, they generally speaking, they want some form of financial data. Where, first of all, they want to know that you've got a viable business. Second of all, they want to know how long you've been in business, how sustainable is your business. And
Mhm.
then thirdly, they want to know what impact this grant is going to have on you. And the bigger the impact, obviously, the bigger the chances of you being successful. So if your revenue last year was $100,000 with $80,000 worth of expenses, so you made a $20,000 profit, that's fine. And you apply for this grant and it's $20,000, but it's going to double your revenue and half your expenses, then there's a huge argument as to why they should give you that grant money.
Right. Okay, cool. So what things can be included? Like what sort of things should people be thinking about to increase their chances of getting a grant? Okay, but are there any things you go, you need to make sure you include these one or two things, or
Sure.
does it depend
Have
on
a look. Always have a look at the essential criteria. Have a
yeah,
look at what the grant is, because the grant outline will tell you why they're offering you this money. So,
yeah,
why it's available. Is it for tourism? Is it for manufacturing? Is it for export? Whatever it is, there's a specific reason that they want to throw money at this particular space.
mhm.
And then there'll be
Obviously, you
keywords.
express that criteria as part of that.
Yeah, absolutely. But you also want to make sure that there's keywords in here, and it might say increase export sales to, and then you can say Asia or Europe or wherever you want to say.
Mhm.
If you're meeting that demand, then it's going to, as it goes through the first paper sift, then it's going to get passed up and passed into the green light section. If
Mhm.
your argument doesn't hit any of that minimum criteria, it's not even, they're not going to look at your numbers. They're just going to, it's
Yeah.
just not going to meet that
Okay.
mark. The second thing is, and it surprises me how many people don't do this. The second thing is get on the phone, ring the grant people, speak to them, and go, what makes a really successful grant? What exactly are you looking for? And they will tell you, because
Yeah.
that makes their job so much easier. If you're submitting something that they want to see, tick, 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 it's a lot easier to tick, 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 tick than it is to try and find what they're looking for, especially when it's not actually there. There's no substantiation behind it. So if you get onto the phone and ask them, what do you want to see? Or you get on the phone and say, look, I've got this application. I think I'm eligible. Is there anything you can do to help me complete it? They can't answer it for you, they can't complete it for you, but they can say to you, well, what specific area are you struggling with? What is it that you do? What do you want to do? And what are you struggling with? And they can maybe give you some help as to, again, what makes a successful application.
Okay.
And so
Great.
you can go, well, I meet that because I do this over here, and I hadn't yet thought of that. I already have the microphone, and I already have the headset. I already have the space. I might need to soundproof it a little bit, so now I need to add that cost into my budget.
Cool. Okay. So obviously, essential criteria is one of the things that they obviously need to be looking at, which you would think
Sure.
is obvious, but probably not always, right?
You know, though, that's you say that it's obvious, but this here's the thing, and I read this on LinkedIn, and then I went away and I thought about it and wondered how true it was because you shouldn't believe everything you read, right? But
Absolutely.
the more I read, the more true it is, and that is a male will put in an application if they meet 60% of the criteria or more. A
Yeah.
female won't put in the application if they don't meet at least 95%.
Yep. Yep. I read that yesterday. Someone had posted something. It was in relation to applying for jobs.
Jobs, yeah,
Yeah. And you're like, that is such an interesting difference in the way that men and women think about these topics,
absolutely.
right? Like most,
You
obviously,
have to,
men
yeah. If I
grab their
don't submit this, then from a male's perspective, if I don't submit it, I've got no chance of getting it. I've got nothing to lose by spending the time and putting it together.
Yeah.
From a female's perspective, we kind of have this expectation that we have to be perfect. We have to meet that minimum benchmark at all times across all areas. And
Yeah.
if we don't, then we move on to something else that we can be excellent or excel at. Isn't that crazy?
I know. It is, oh my god, we could that's a whole other episode to unpack how the
Oh, yeah, yeah,
I
but
think
I
that obviously it's part of that could be how we're raised and the external and internal influences of family and all that sort of stuff. There's a whole big conversation
sure,
there. But it's really interesting, and it's like there's this that that a lot of men have this difference in confidence level or ego or whatever you want to call it. I don't know, but it is really interesting when you see stats like that. The people men will just go, "Yeah, I'm going to apply for it," whether
yeah.
it's relevant or not. They're just going to do it. Like,
And so, therefore, my advice to anyone listening to this is be brave. Apply for anyway, because what it'll do is, even if you're not
yeah,
successful, it'll give
yeah,
you practice in filling out the grants.
yeah,
And then you can ring up and get feedback as to why you weren't successful. Well, you didn't
yeah,
meet the minimum criteria. We specifically needed you to have this, and that was the one thing you were lacking. You had everything else, but we needed you to. This was an export grant, and you just didn't mention overseas
yeah,
relationships. So it could be something as simple as that. But they could also turn around and say, actually, it wasn't succinct enough. You said a lot of words, but didn't actually tell us what the
yeah,
true outcome, the measurable outcome was. Or it might be the other way and say, you just didn't give us enough information.
yeah,
We can see where you were going, but there just doesn't seem to be enough substantiation behind it. You didn't
yeah.
doesn't look like you've done enough research
And I
because
think
you didn't
that's
put
a
in the
really
words.
important point is to, like, do it anyway, and then you can get that feedback. It's good
Yeah,
practice. You go, "Well, I've done that now. Now I know how to improve next time." Or you can have someone come and help you in that process because, like yourself, like,
sure.
you help people with doing this whole grants process. So it could be
I
a case
do. I
of
help.
a bit of an understanding, but,
Yeah, I do. I help specifically zero clients, but because that's the platform that
yeah,
both I and the client can work together the most cohesively. I work in a space where, with a client, if I see that there's a grant available, I have a subscription to a number of these websites where I get alerted every day, and I open it up and I go, oh, that would be a great grant for that client. I'm not just, are you interested? Do you want
yeah,
any help? There we go. There are there are experts in this field, and I don't claim to be one, but there are experts in this field that are grant writers, and they're used to writing very um that they're used to this very because they're writing grants all the time for the different industry bodies or for the different government agencies. They've learnt the language that the government or the agency wants to hear, so they're very, very good at that. What's the word? The
well, it's
can't
about
think of the word.
I think you
It's
said
basically, yeah. So it's
the
basically
right
that.
word.
Sorry,
You said before, it's like it's using the terminology that government.
absolutely. There's
We know that that is
yeah,
often a very different language in
yeah,
government departments. So I think you're right, you what you said before was spot on. It's like if you're using the right terminology and the
sure.
right types of words, then you're probably, 2 steps ahead of the person who's not, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's writing that conversation and writing that argument that just builds merit and picks up your passion and your genuine wanting to succeed at this. And all of that, yeah, persuasive writing. That's what I'm talking about. Persuasive writing. I knew I'd get the word.
Okay, so what are your top 3 tips when it comes to this space of grants and what to look for and whatever? So I'm a small business owner, I haven't done this before, like, what are the 3 takeaways that I should, take away from the podcast today, or the
Sure.
3 things I should go and do next?
Okay, number one, design the project in your head first.
Yep.
Don't don't look at how much money, don't look at where the money's coming from, don't look at anything like that. Just design the project in your head. If you had an amount of money handed to you, what would you do with it and how would that benefit your business? So design that first. Then come back and look at your numbers. Can you afford to do it without the grant? Can you afford to do it? Can you afford not to do it potentially?
Mhm.
And make sure that your numbers are really, really on target. Like you should be in your zero file every week, looking at your profit and loss and your balance sheet and having those.
Every
That's another
week?
conversation
Really?
for
I
another
thought
day.
once a year. I so fail in this space. Like, I just hand it over to hubby and the accountant, go, "You guys go and deal with it." But what I would never even think of doing that once a week. But I suppose if I was looking for grants and needed to be really across those financials more,
Yeah,
then obviously that makes sense to do that.
I'll come back to that. But yeah, so yeah, just being
Again,
across the numbers, just being able to because you can't measure what you can't manage, right? So your numbers are crucially important. What and having that outcome, like so number three is what are the outcomes? What does a successful project look like? Is it going to increase your revenue? Is it going to decrease your expenses? Is it going to grow your business? Are you going to be able to offer employment? Are you going to be able to open more offices in more places? What's the actual outcome? What's the benefit of this project to you and the wider community? And then if there's number four, it's start small and go local for your grants. So I'll
yeah.
just slip that one in
No,
there.
yeah, that's a good one. It is. I think that makes sense too, because with that obviously smaller grant as well, you're learning this whole process and what you need to do and what you can and can't do and all that
Yeah,
sort of stuff. There's obviously there's a learning curve there, but I love all that. I've learned so much from everything that you've said, and I'm fiercely writing down all these notes, going, I need to look at that, I need to look at that. And, like, it's one of those areas I think if you're not comfortable with, or you're not familiar with it, you tend to just leave it alone because you just go, "Oh, yeah, not really my space. So I'm just gonna go and play over in this playground." But at
sure.
the same time, you could be missing opportunity, right? Where you could be like, "Well, actually, there could be
That's
money on the
that's
table
exactly,
that I could
and
take some of that."
and I think that's why I love the job that I have the most, because that is exactly what happens. So it's so easy to jump online, apply for an ABN. Anyone and everyone over the age of 18 can do this, right?
Yeah.
The problem is that doesn't come with an instruction manual. It
No.
doesn't come with a book or a webcast or anything that says now you're a business owner, here's how hard it's going to be. You're going to work twice as hard for half the amount of money for at least the next 2 years.
Yeah.
You're in for a bumpy ride. It's going to be exhilarating. It's going to be amazing. It's going to be awful. It's going to be terrifying all at once.
Yep.
Welcome to the world
Isn't
of
it
business
funny?
ownership.
When everyone tells you this stuff, you just think, "Oh, it's easy. I'm just gonna go and start my own business." As you said,
Because I'm really good at what I
build
do,
that.
right? I'm really good at catering. I'm really good at socials. I'm
Yeah,
really good at networking.
but
I'm
I'm not
really good at
good
whatever it
at
is that
it.
I'm even grant writing. I'm really good at what I do, but that doesn't necessarily make me really good at running a business doing what
No,
I'm really good at doing. And that's where I guess my colleagues, we fit in. This is what we're here to hold your hand through it.
yeah,
A big part of that is numbers. It's so important. Just being able to understand, you can love what you do, but you
yeah,
need to make it needs to pay for itself. It needs to
yeah,
generate revenue. Otherwise it's a hobby. So how much revenue is it generating? How expensive is it to generate that revenue? And then what can you do to leverage off that? If you don't know those numbers, where do you go to from there? How do you measure your success? You can have 1,000 followers or 2 million followers on TikTok, but if that's not generating any revenue,
Yeah.
what does success look like?
It's absolutely. I noticed there was a post on LinkedIn that I commented on this morning around TikTok and do you need to use it and stuff like that. And it's like as entertaining as it can be to watch,
Yeah,
unless you're in a particular niche or space,
yeah.
dancing like an idiot on TikTok isn't going to necessarily put money in your bank. So that's a whole other topic that we can talk.
No, like I said, my passion, because of where I am now, like I'm working more and more in the agricultural space and agribusiness space, and that's kind of going back to my roots and what I love to do. And all the industries in small towns are obviously off the back of that because that's where
Yeah.
the local economy is coming from. But I was on TikTok this morning watching a video about fainting goats. So it's that's not going to generate any revenue for me at all. I now just want a place big enough to have 10 fainting
Oh,
goats.
God. Oh, the joys of social media.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much,
Now I've
Emily.
decided that that's what success looks like for me now, right? It's this acreage with 10 fainting goats.
Oh, I love where these conversations go sometimes. They just go unexpected places. I would never thought we'd be mentioning goats at all, but I love the fact that we can. Oh, and on talking about animals, hopefully you haven't, there's not too much background noise of naughty dogs barking downstairs while I'm recording this either, so
I can hear my neighbours next door. I'm sorry about
Oh,
that too.
that's just the reality of life though, right? You know, there's
Sure.
often, kids running around in someone's background or there's dogs barking or there's garbage trucks going past when you don't want them to. It's reality and it's real life and that's, we just get along with it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
That's business, isn't it? That's the ups and downs of business itself.
That's right. You've just got to roll with it, right? Nothing's
Yeah.
ever perfect. Thank you, Emily. That was just so super helpful and packed with so much information. I'm going to share all those things that you've talked about in the show notes, as well as links to your website. If anyone wants more information, they can get in touch with Emily and talk more. But she's certainly a wealth of knowledge in this area, and I have personally learned a bunch of stuff. So hopefully you have found that super helpful. And that is another episode of Sales Without Socials. Thanks, Emily, for being part of it.
Thank you so much for your time. I've loved it.
Thank you. If you are curious about how your business can make sales without focusing on social media, then I invite you to check out the Sales Without Socials program. The Sales Without Socials program helps B2B service-based business owners master a reliable, consistent, and repeatable way to generate leads and sales in 15 minutes a day without posting on socials 5 days a week, so you can stop chasing algorithms and start effortlessly landing dream clients on repeat. If you are mentally exhausted by the constant changes, sick of trying to beat the unbeatable algorithms, and know there must be a better way to market your business that takes much less time but gets you better results, then I promise you'll love this program. You'll find it at saleswithoutsocials.com.au. And if you enjoyed this episode, I'd really love it if you could subscribe and leave a review, because more subscribers and reviews help the podcast reach more people, and I would be truly grateful. Thank you for being awesome. And until next time, you tune in. Never let anyone dull your marketing sparkle.